Hi, Sean.
Hi, Mike.
I'm here with Sean. I know, Sean, that you can't really speak to your successful lawsuit against the Archdiocese for wrongful termination. So I'd like to talk a little bit about unemployment for teachers that work for the Seattle Archdiocese in the western part of the state. Were you eligible for unemployment?
Absolutely not. In fact, I am able to talk about my lawsuit with the Archdiocese of Seattle. I just can't talk about the dollar amount for the settlement I received.
Oh, okay.
So, and by the way, I received everything but an "I'm sorry."
And that's what you were asking for, an apology for the...
Oh, absolutely. You know, the church teaches that you say you're sorry when you've done wrong, and you go and you make restitution. Well, they made restitution with me, but they didn't say they're sorry, and I know they're not going to. So that's another reason why I choose not to go back to work for the Archdiocese of Seattle as an employee, is because of the way they treat their employees.
So
it's like crap.
So when you were terminated, did you apply for unemployment?
Not only did I apply for unemployment, I also applied to get my old job back, and I got neither. I didn't realize until after I had lost my job that the church that I work for, St. Paul's Parish in Seattle, didn't contribute to unemployment. I wasn't told that either in my employment application, in my contract, or even in my interviews that I had. I had more than one. And it was never posted in the faculty room. And I later found out when I went all the way to an unemployment judge that that's what they were most interested in, was whether or not the church followed the law in regards to posting full disclosure to employees as to whether or not they get unemployment or not. The church, after I did some research with my attorney, would come to find out that in Seattle, the umbrella organization, which is the nonprofit corporation of the Archbishop of Seattle, they have several for-profit as well as nonprofit corporations under their umbrella. And the church schools that I belong to were part of the nonprofit area of the umbrella. Therefore, not only is the church self-insured because they have so much money, but they are not they're not made to pay an unemployment. They opted out of doing that because they felt that they had enough in their coffers to cover any wrongdoing that might come up.
But as I understand it, dioceses or archdioceses have the choice whether to declare themselves exempt from contributing to unemployment. Is that correct?
Yeah, according to what I heard from an unemployment judge, that happened years ago, like in the early 70s. They had the option when they were renegotiating, when the state made new rules, that they could say yes or no to paying an unemployment. They chose not to.
So the new bishop could decide for the people who work for him to contribute to unemployment.
Oh, absolutely, right? At any time. Yeah, they could turn that switch on in a moment's notice.
So why do you think they're not?
Money. As I've found out about church, and I have this belief, whether it's Catholic or Protestant or Jewish in this country, it's all about money.
Sean, when you were working for the Archdiocese school, were you aware that you were not covered for unemployment should you become unemployed?
Absolutely not. In fact, I found out through the unemployment judge that I talked to that they should have fully disclosed that to me by law when I became an employee of the Archdiocese of Seattle. That means that they had to post a poster in the faculty room break room announcing that. And secondly, it should have been disclosed to me both verbally and in writing at the time that I was hired in my teaching contract, and it wasn't. Now that I've made a big deal of it, suddenly these posters are appearing in faculty lunchrooms, and they're making sure to disclose that.
Would you have taken the job had you known you didn't have that security?
Absolutely not. And I wouldn't have taken it because it's not as far as I'm concerned, it's a right of the employees in this state of Washington that if they put in, 40 to 60 hours a week for a couple of years, that they should be able to draw unemployment just like everybody else, regardless of the fact that you work for a religious organization. And see, other staff don't know that either. It's not just the teachers, it's all staff, even janitors.
Well, some people who work for the Archdiocese are covered, though.
Yeah, but it depends on if they're working for the part of the corporation under that umbrella that's nonprofit or for-profit. Just like when we did an asset search during my lawsuit, we found out that the Archdiocese owns a lot of property here in Seattle, for example, that they pay property tax on, but there's also church schools where they don't. So it's to their benefit to get as many of these things that they own under a nonprofit status and avoid paying taxes. And that's what blows me away. They're not paying property taxes, yet they're not paying in unemployment. And then you got the average place like, say, the Starbucks, where the owner is paying both sales tax and they're paying property tax, and they're also having to pay unemployment for their employees. So they're getting it two ways.
I think you mentioned earlier that a number of bishops have spoken out, as well as decided that their employees in their diocese or archdiocese will be covered?
From what I read this week, there were 4 archbishops in Wisconsin and in New Hampshire that came out and said, hey, it's an issue of equity and fairness. We need to pay our employees unemployment. And I thought, well, why not here? You know, why the double-edged sword? Why the double-edged message? You know, it's okay if you're an employee over in the Midwest, but not here on the West Coast. Do we dress differently? Do we talk differently? No. Are we richer than they are? Who knows? We've got Boeing and Microsoft out here, but, you know, why the inequity? And yet the church teaches being equitable and fair and doing what's just, and yet they say it out of one side of their face and they don't do it out of the other.
Yeah, I've also talked to different teachers who work in the Archdiocese to hear that they're paid maybe 80% to 90% of what their contemporaries in the public school system would be. Mm-hmm. A number of them salaries are frozen. They're afraid to speak up.
Or even to form a union. Mike, it's union wages versus non-union. The churches don't want unions with teachers and staff because it's going to cost them more money. Yet, again, I go back to the tax issue. They're tax exempt. So they do have the money compared to the average Joe on the street who tries to run a business. You know, hang out a sign and open a business. To do something for employees other than fog and mirror would be nice.
3.
Okay, well, basically, when I got into this lawsuit with the Archdiocese, it was over whistleblowing. And I discovered that they had something called a canon law process. And I asked them where the canon was.
What were you whistleblowing about?
Whistleblowing was about turning in our principal at the school for wrongdoing, where he was using employee matching funds for field trips rather than using them for the quote-unquote scholarship program that he claimed was happening with the 7th and 8th grade field trips. And there was an inequitable distribution of funds to different families within the parish. And then some of the money was also placed into his pockets. So I discovered the wrongdoing and turned it in, and the church decided to cover it up. And in the process, they fired me because I turned it in and they wanted to keep it quiet.
And so then you went forward with a lawsuit. How often were you in court?
I didn't want to get into a lawsuit, first of all. I turned it into them and said they need to get their archdiocesan attorneys down to the parish and get this mess cleaned up before it went public. Because if I heard about it as a new teacher, you could imagine what parents were talking about in the hallways, and then somebody from the press would pick up on it, you know, fairly soon. And so what I did was I turned it in, and they started to cover up. They lost a huge source of income because of it from Boeing and from Microsoft and other companies in the Puget Sound area that were being basically lied to. And eventually they retired the principal after they fired me. And I had worked with my attorney all year long to try and make sure I kept my job. And I did keep it until the contract was over, and then they said they didn't need me anymore. Well, of course they didn't need someone tattling on them, even though they taught me that that's what you do. If you see something wrong, you turn it in. You know, the old act of omission, act of commission, you're guilty if you turn your back versus if you were the one who stabbed the person in the back. You know. Anyway, bottom line is the church believes it's above the law. And I went into a secular courtroom, meaning the regular King County Superior Court, and I explained that I'd been fired wrongly and I wanted my job back, and that I had turned in wrongdoing, and as a whistleblower I was protected under Washington state and federal law, didn't matter to the church. They figured they could outspend me, and as long as they threw money at the problem, that I'd probably go away. Anyway, they made the wonderful mistake of allowing their attorney to disclose the audit that they had conducted to me without me signing a non-disclosure agreement, and so I was able to send that to the press and to parents in the parish, and suddenly the cat was out of the bag. They couldn't hide the wrongdoing anymore, and the parish owed over $200,000 back to Boeing, and they're still in the hole. And the IRS is still investigating. But the bottom line is they use this thing called ministerial exception to try and shut down my voice by saying that I was a Catholic school employee and critical to the mission of the church. Therefore, I was subject to canon law and canon discipline. The secular courts had no right to intervene in their business and tell them how to run their schools and how to treat their employees. And I disagreed.
And this was in the courtroom?
Correct. And I told them I didn't sign away my rights at the front door just because I became a Catholic school teacher.
So what did the judge say when their attorneys
The judge was all over it. He said it's pretty
right?
one-sided. He said even when you sign a contract, it should be full disclosure, and it's pretty one-sided. Mr. Taeschner wasn't doing any wrongdoing. He's a mandatory reporter as a state-certified teacher, and since the Catholic schools agree to let the Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction monitor what's going on in the schools, because they certify the principals, they certify the teachers, that they had every right to step in and see what's going on. And the church says, no, you don't. We're a private school. And he says, yes, they do. They're mandatory reporters. They're there to protect kids first.
So that ministerial exception, do you think it's gone?
Oh, hell no, no. I was the only teacher in the history of the Archdiocese of Seattle to stand up and get it all the way to 2 appellate court decisions. And they stopped before it became case law. Because
the church stopped.
It's a weapon. It's a weapon that they use very effectively against staff anywhere in the Catholic schools and Protestant and Jewish schools across the United States. If they can say, no, you are our property, we have a right to tell you what to do. In fact, we're so large, we have our own court system, we have our own judges, we have our own attorneys, etc. I laughed at them. I said, well, that's like the Nazis. You know, they had their own judges and they had their own lawyers, and after a fair trial, you'd be shot immediately.
Well. Sean, do you have any suggestions for what teachers can do in this climate where fear pervades, to find some kind of equity in salaries as well as protection should they become unemployed?
Well, in my opinion, people need to form unions in the Catholic school system. And it's not just teachers, it's all staff. Unless they have the ability to really sit down and analyze what's going on in this country right now with all the union busting going on, with the fact that unemployment will only last, 99 weeks, and then once it's exhausted, that's it. Or family savings is gone, or if you don't have a support system such as family to fall back on, we'll all be homeless. We'll be living in tents on top of pallets somewhere. And that's not comfortable, especially in winter.
Within walking distance from where we're sitting, actually.
Probably next to the Union Gospel Mission or something like that, yeah.
Now, there's a tent city not far from where we're sitting, about 105 people.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. I bet at least one of them is a ex-Catholic school employee. Yeah, people need to unionize, and people are starting to see that now. They're starting to wake up. You know, don't wait till it's gone. Don't wait till, like Joni Mitchell said, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. That's what's happening.